Okay, so what do you want to do when you grow up? How many people have ever heard that question? Yes, right? Do you even remember what you used to say when you were asked that question?
Garbage man.
Garbage man. And I heard somebody else mention yesterday, are you even doing the same thing that you thought that you wanted to do then? Probably not, right? But as soon as kids are old enough, we start asking them that question, right? What do you want to do when you grow up? And we don't expect them to know at like 5 or 6, but we want them to start thinking about that's the expectation. And part of the problem is that with students with disabilities, they're not always asked that question, or not often enough, because sometimes there may be people around them that don't have those expectations, but they should. And that starts by asking them the questions early in life. When you're asking the 6-year-old, what do you want to do when I grow up? You're just planting that seed to let them know that the expectation is when you grow up, you will go on to do something. You will choose a career, you will choose a job. So we just want to get them into that mindset. So we start off with that question of what do you want to do when you grow up? And then the next thing is, if a lot of times we'll say to kids, the world is your oyster, right? Well, if the world is my oyster, I need to know what is in that oyster shell that I can choose from. What is out there? Because just saying that to them, it's too broad. So you want to ask them questions that are going to make them start to really think. And even to answer this question, it's really difficult, not just for kids, but even adults, because you really have to have a good sense of self. You have to understand what your skills are, your interests are, what are your values, what are your abilities. All of that comes into play into answering this question. So then after that, we get to how you're going to get there, right? So after a kid maybe has in their mind what they potentially might want to do when they grow up, how are they going to get from point A to point B? What comes after high school? For the thing that you want to do, are you going to have to go to a training program? Are you going to have to do some kind of formal education in order to get there? Or is it something that you can just start working in as soon as you graduate, right? More questions. And then if it is something that you can just go into as soon as you graduate, how do you get it? I mean, is it something that they can just sit at home and play video games all day and somebody's going to knock on the door and say, hey, I got the dream job for you, waiting for you? No, right?
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. And that's something they got to understand. They got to go out and get it. Because what's going to happen is they have to go through a competitive process with other individuals that don't have disabilities, but they want to be able to compete with them so that they can also achieve what it is that they desire. So again, like I said, these are just some of the questions that we have for our kids. And then the next thing is, okay, I know what I want to do. I know it's going to require training or education. Okay. What do I have to do when I get the job? What do they expect from me? How am I supposed to act on the job, right? What do employers want? I found this list of job qualifications on a recent job board, and I thought it was very interesting. And it was for a job that I would imagine many young people, maybe young girls especially, would like to work at, because it was for Pink. Does anybody know what Pink is? Victoria's Secret. It's the affiliate that targets younger people, so teens, college age, youth, right? So look at the qualifications. They said what they're looking for is somebody who exhibits an authentic desire to exceed the customer's expectations. They want somebody who demonstrates a sense of urgency, right? So not just loafing around like you have nothing to do, you got all the time in the world to serve the customer. has a healthy competitive spirit while maintaining a team focus. Interesting, because there's two sides to that. They want them to be competitive so that they're motivated, self-motivated, but not so much that you throw somebody under the bus, right? You still know how to work with people. Is resilient and bounces back quickly from setbacks, right? So don't go off and skulk in the corner when things don't work out your way. You know how to bounce back and deal with the issues. And pursues opportunities to take on more responsibility. So they're proactive. They don't just sit back and say, well, I didn't have anything to do, so I figured I'd just play games on my phone. What is interesting to you about that list? I'm sorry?
They're very subjective.
Very subjective.
Yeah, not giving you specifics, there's no work skills.
No work skills,
Yeah.
right? They're not technical skills. They're soft skills, right? That is what employers are looking for. We know from research that it says that most people lose their first job because of a lack of social skills, not technical skills. You say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time, right? You act in a way that's inappropriate at work. You don't show the initiative that they're looking for. You show up late for work. You don't show up at all. You call in sick. Those kinds of things too, right? So CareerSource recently did a study where they asked all the employers across the state, what are the skill gaps? What is missing from the what's the word? From the population of people that you are hiring, what key skills are missing? And they found that for every time that they mentioned that there was a technical skill missing, twice as much there was a soft skill that was lacking. And you can see the two primary ones at the very top were communication, which they were talking about interpersonal communication, reading and writing, phone etiquette, customer service, active listening, following directions, and reliability and time management. So attendance, meeting deadlines, dependability. Again, just showing you how employers are really looking for those soft skills. And that's something that we have to start developing the professionalism in our youth very early. So I said all of that to say that all of these questions that we should be asking our kids, right? These are the things that VR is in the business for. This is what we help kids do, to be able to answer all of those questions. So Voc Rehab, if you're familiar with us, we help individuals with disabilities to get a job, to keep a job, and to live independently, right? Increase their independence. So with the transition youth services, what we're really focusing on is that preparation piece. Because they're young, they got a lot of time, but we want to start instilling in them that there is an expectation that they can work, and that they should work now, put in the work now to really identify what is meaningful work for them so that they can achieve that after high school. With the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that was passed in 2014. So what it really did was expand the array of services that VR has offered for transition youth. And it also increased their access to these services to more students with disabilities than what maybe we typically served in the past. Sir?
I have a question. Age. What is the age that would qualify? Two or three questions actually.
Okay.
The age and the age, and they have to be collecting disability Social Security to qualify for the program?
Okay, put a pin in that, because I'm coming up in the next few slides on that, I guarantee you. Okay, so WIOA says that we have to now provide pre-employment transition services to all students with disabilities. And what are those pre-ex? They're career exploration services. The purpose is to help them answer all of those questions that I just talked about, right? So that we can ensure that these kids are getting the services and the training that they need in order to achieve competitive integrated employment after high school. Okay, so these are the pre-employment transition services. We have job exploration counseling, post-secondary educational counseling, work readiness training, work-based learning experiences, self-advocacy to include youth peer mentoring. In the law, it combines them. VR has split them out as two distinct services. Okay, and we're going to walk through each of them. Okay, so your job exploration counseling. Here, it's any type, for VR, it's a category of services. So we have a few services that fall within this category that meets this definition. And the purpose of this particular service is it's any guidance, instruction, assessment that helps the youth identify those skills, those interests, those abilities, and also identify their options after high school. So to include looking at the job market for their local area, and also the qualifications for those jobs, right? So again, answering those questions about, you know, because you first have to figure out what is it that you're good at doing, what are you interested in, to answer that first question of what do I really want to do when I grow up. So for VR, this category of services includes aptitude and interest assessments, your vocational evaluations. Discovery is an alternate evaluation that actually Jan talked about earlier this morning. What I've learned is that sometimes the typical types of assessments that are used aren't very kind to students with most significant disabilities. And you end up with a laundry list of things that they can't do. So discovery is strengths-based, and you come out with a report on all the things that the student is able to do and that are transferable and can relate to a job, a career for that individual. Okay, and then supported employment individual career plan. Again, this is for our supported employment customers, I guess equivalent to the individual plan for employment, but for our supported employment customers. All of that falls within the category of job exploration counseling. Then next we have post-secondary educational counseling. So this is going to talk about what your options are after high school in your local community usually, and it's any guidance or counseling with that individual to discuss those options. Normally this service is offered by our VR counselors, okay? VR counselors. Okay, so we don't have this as a different service. All the other services that we offer, we contract for through providers. This particular service would be handled by the VR counselor. So they're going to talk to kids about, if somebody is thinking about going to a local college or university, they're going to talk to them about the disability services offices that are available so that they understand what's there to help them. Once they leave high school, they're no longer under IDA, right? No more IEP. So, but the disability services office offers those supports for these kids with disabilities when they're on a college or university campus, right? So it's important for them to know that that's an available resource and how to connect with those resources. Student financial aid options, that's another thing they'll discuss with them. Talk about federal financial aid, how do you apply for that through the FAFSA, any other scholarships that may be available, and then post-secondary institutions in your local community, and really looking at those programs at those post-secondary institutions that relate to whatever vocational goal the student has, or they don't have to have a formal goal at that time, but if they have some idea as to what it is they want to do, then you'd want to look into those schools with those programs.
Do they have those if kids that are in private school as well, private placement, or is that strictly public?
No, we also serve for private schools also. Serve private school students, I'm sorry. workplace readiness training. So this one focuses on those soft skills, right, that Pink is looking for and most of the employers across this state. So they're developing their soft skills, employability skills, independent living skills. And you can see from our list, just a truncated list of some of the curriculum requirements that go into that course. It is a 20-hour training course. And they just cover things like resume writing, how to, give a great interview. How do you present yourself, your strengths, your abilities? How do you present that to a potential employer? Teamwork, how to work in teams. Everybody's got to work in teams now, whether you like it or not. Professionalism. This little one, he gets an F for being on his cell phone at work, but he hasn't taken the course yet, so it's okay. Enthusiasm and attitude, teaching kids how to demonstrate that on the job it's really important, and navigating the community. Okay, I was going to tell you something. One thing that I always think about with the workplace readiness training, or just in terms of professionalism at the job, and kids don't know unless you tell them, right? I remember being at DCF years ago, and it was summertime, and they had employed a young girl, and I don't know how old she was, but the IT guy was helping her set up the computer, and the first thing she asked him was, "Where do I find the games?"
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, that was my reaction. I was like, oh gosh, your mom not tell her not to ask that question. But I mean, they don't know, so yes, we need to start teaching them those. I'm sorry.
The mentoring program what is the mentoring program? You saw that on the last slide?
Yes, I'm going to go into detail about the mentor and your other question. I haven't forgotten you. It's coming up.
Thank you.
Okay, so then work-based learning experiences. This uses the real world of work, right, to help youth make that connection between what they're learning at school. It's out in the community, and it can involve many different types of activities. So things like job shadowing, you go to a job, you follow somebody in a particular type of career, see what that job is like. Career mentorship, you can do informational interviews with different employers about that type of work. Paid and non-paid internships and work experiences. We do like paid, of course, because everybody goes to work to get paid, right? So we want kids to learn about that also, not just the incentive of the money, but also learn about getting a paycheck and learning how to manage your money and that kind of thing. Volunteering and service learning, and workplace tours and field trips. You can see the picture in this slide. The girl is learning how to work in a library, right? Check people out. Who knows? She may be a future librarian. We don't know. But one of the things with the work-based learning experiences, let me just mention, because you might be more familiar, when we talk about it with adults, we call it OJT, on the job training, right? When we're talking about it within the context of pre-employment transition services for youth, it's work-based learning experiences. With the adults, the job is more for skill acquisition in a particular type of job. With the youth, the work-based learning experiences, it's all about experiences, plural. We want them to get a lot of exposure to different types of job settings, different types of work, right? So there's no expectation at the end that they should have a job by the time they finish. And yes, they can do multiple work-based learning experiences throughout the time that they're working with us. So it not only exposes them to different work environments, it helps them develop that concept of work, to really understand what that is. It also helps them build their resume, right? So if a youth is going through school and let's say they get 5 work-based learning experiences, they already have a very full resume compared to some kids who go off to college, even get out of college, and now they're looking for their first job, right? So definitely that puts you at an advantage if you have more jobs to demonstrate your skills and abilities on a resume. It also is a place for them to practice those work readiness training skills, those soft skills that they learned during that other course. They'll also have the chance to identify what accommodation needs they might have, right? So once they get into that setting, they'll be able to see, oh, this is something that I'm going to need in order to be successful when I'm actually working. It helps them also develop stamina for work. We don't try to, put them in places where they're going to be working 8 or 10-hour shifts, but still get used to, depending on different types of jobs. You work a fast food restaurant or you work in retail or something, maybe just getting used to standing up for long periods of time, just building up your stamina. So, self-advocacy training. This is another one of our courses. This one teaches youth how to speak up for themselves and the things that they need in order to be successful. Not just in education, but also at work. So what it'll cover is instructing them on their rights under ADA and under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and also under IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It will also help them to identify more, again, of self-awareness, so understanding what they're good at, where areas where they might need a little assistance. They'll talk to them about the decision about disability disclosure, whether or not they want to do it, how do you do that appropriately, requesting accommodations on the job, how would you go about that if you were with an employer, self-determination. It's really, the whole service is about getting them to the point where they can speak up for themselves proactively. They don't have to be prompted, and they know what they need and they know how to ask for what they need. This is actually a 2-part course. So the first part is 20 hours, the second part is 25 hours. And the youth come out with a portfolio of the products and things that they've learned. Our next service is the Youth Peer Mentoring Service. So this is, when I mentioned before in the law, they combine self-advocacy to include peer mentoring. We've split it out. So youth peer mentoring is an intensive self-advocacy training service, because we still want to try to teach them those self-advocacy and self-determination skills. But what we're doing is pairing them up with a like-aged peer who's going to work with them to help them develop those skills. Specifically for this service, let's say the way that it works is that, let's say the counselor is working with a youth and determines that they're not socially engaged, they're very isolated. Okay, they need to get out more and around other kids their age. Or they really lack independent living skills. That's something that we know they're going to need. VR doesn't necessarily train on independent living skills, but we know that's something they're going to need, and we know who they can get it from. Also, let's say with this kid, he has an interest in electronics and how they work, actually the mechanics of it and building it, right? Okay, so what the counselor would do is say that I think this kid needs to be connected with the Centers for Independent Living. He also needs to be connected with, let's say, is it the Disability Sports Organization? Okay, I thought. Think that would be a good fit for him. Get out, get some fresh air, meet other kids, socialize. Also, I know about a social network locally, an employment network that where professionals who work in that area of building computers or tinkering with computers, I don't know that much about it, so building computers. There's a local network here in this area. I think it would be good for them to connect with them, right? So we have our provider, they hire a like-aged peer who's going to come alongside to the youth, and they're going to help them do all of those connecting activities to be able to connect with those services or organizations that I mentioned. And the reason why I say it's an intensive service and it's about self-advocacy and self-determination, because what? A lot of kids won't seek out any of those services, right?
Yeah, we're doing it for them,
You're doing it for them.
for real.
And you won't always be around to do it for them. So they've got to learn to be able to do it on their own.
Yeah.
So the peer comes alongside and shows them how to do that, how to make the phone calls, who do you talk to, what questions do you ask? And they continually support them in those activities until they're functioning independently on their own, so that they can acquire access skills or services or organizations maybe today that they need or even in the future. Okay.
So since it starts at 14, you have other 14-year-olds mentoring them? With
The peer mentors actually have to be at least 18 years old.
Okay.
And we try to keep them no older than maybe 6 years older than the youth, but sometimes it depends. It depends on the individual.
Where do you get these other peers?
The peers are hired by our providers. So I think a number of them have been recruiting students for internships from college universities. And in some cases, I've heard some of our own customers who have gotten to the place where they are more self-advocates and self-determined, they will be hired to,
But they're all screened to make sure that they're actually like a good influence?
yes, they all have to go through a level 2 background screening. Our providers go through that same screening. The providers of this service are trained and certified, and we do instruct them on what to look for in those individuals.
So where do you have this up and running? Because it's not in Collier County yet. I know
It's not yet, but it's coming.
It's not. Yeah.
Okay, so we did pilot this service last year in South Florida in about 3 counties. We're in the process of expanding this service across the state, so I think we have about 50 to 60 providers now that are going through different stages of training across the state of Florida to be able to offer this service. Okay, I'm gonna move forward because I'm getting a little behind on this. Okay, so who can receive these pre-employment transition services, right? The law says that they need to be students with disabilities between the ages of 14 and 21. So because they can be as young as 14, student means they might actually be in middle school as long as they're 14, like I said, and they could be in a college or a university, again, as long as they haven't passed the age of, reached their 22nd birthday, then they're still eligible for these particular services. They do have to be a student with a disability. That's the definition in the law. So the types of documentation that we accept are an IEP plan, a 504 plan, or some other documentation from the school that states that the individual is a student with a disability. So, for instance, I heard a lot today people asking about youth who are homeschooled. In that situation, the Department of Education has homeschool contacts across the state, right? So you would get in touch with your homeschool contact person and ask them to coordinate with the school to access a letter from, an official letter from the school that indicates that your son or daughter is a student with a disability. Some people have also used McKay Scholarship, right? The award letter, sorry.
For the Gardner?
Or the Gardner, yes. Okay. All right, so you got to think about what is it that you want from VR, all right, from our buffet. Do you want pre-employment transition services only? And you got to think about where your kids are now. 14 through 21, they're in middle school, high school, possibly post-secondary. They're probably in the stage where all of the pre-employment transition services that I described would really suffice, right? That would cover most of their needs at this point in time in their life. If that's all you want, then the only thing you have to do is have the referral made to VR. That's it. So remember when I said that WIOA, it expanded the services to all students with disabilities. Because of that, we developed a system where students don't have to go through the entire application process with VR just to access the pre-employment transition services. They're referred to VR. I can tell you, they're referred to VR, they meet with a VR staff, they conduct the interview, discuss what services they want, select a provider, boom, and they can start services.
Who does the referral?
I'm gonna get to that. Okay, so referral only, no application. On the other side, this is the second pathway to accessing these services. You have pre-employment transition services, but your son or daughter is going to need additional support services, okay? If they're going to need that, they need access to all of VR services, and in that case, you would need the service, the referral to VR, plus place an application for VR services. When you place an application, you're going also through the eligibility process. Now, it's 60 days to determine eligibility, 90 days to determine the individual plan for employment. So, you know, you might think, oh God, I don't want to go through all of that, it's going to take too long. Good thing is, with the pre-employment transition services, as soon as you place the application, we can still begin delivering those pre-employment transition services as long as they meet the other criteria that I said. They're 14 to 21, they're a student with a disability, they have an IEP or 504 plan. That's sufficient to get them started. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that because I know the gentleman in the back, someone had asked about Social Security, if you're receiving Social Security
Thank you.
benefits. That's the other piece that's important right there on that track. If you sign the application and you're receiving Social Security benefits, we can do presumptive eligibility and presume that you are eligible for services.
Now, normally what we suggest is that people start with the pre-ETS only side of things, right? It's usually going to cover most of your needs. Now, I do recognize, though, in some situations, you already know from the get-go that your son or daughter is going to need more of the VR supports. But I would suggest that you start off with the pre-ETS only referral, and then as the VR staff is working with your son or daughter, if they determine that additional supports are going to be needed, they will direct them to placing an application. But you can always start off with that pre-ETS only referral. Okay. Okay, so some of the types of services that are available, those additional VR services for those who have applied for services and are determined eligible, include assistive technology and devices, time-limited medical and or psychological treatment, transportation, post-secondary assistance, on-the-job training and job placement services, your job coaching, supported employment, workplace accommodations. And remember, I was saying, if you notice, a lot of this deals with when the individual is actually working or ready to find that job. That's why I said the pre-employment transition services really can cover most of what the kids need at this stage, what they're in. Okay, so accessing services begins with a referral. And the good thing is anybody can refer, right? So any one of you, as a parent, you can refer your own child to VR. Schools, they can refer your child to VR. And in fact, because of WIOA, we set up an online system that makes it easier for them to be able to make that pre-ETS only, pre-ETS, pre-employment transition services referral to VR, okay? And it streamlines the whole process. So again, it shortens the time so there's not too much of a delay between the referral and them receiving services. If you want to go through your school staff, I'd suggest you just speak to the ESE staff or the guidance counselor and tell them that you want you could just say you want to be referred to VR, or if you know that you want to go for those pre-employment transition services only, just express that to them and they'll do the referral for you. And like I said, you can also do your own referral, And you could easily do that by going to our website, rehabworks.org. On the left-hand side, there's the online VR office directory. Sorry, I skipped it. That's where you'll see the VR online directory. Okay, so you can locate any office across the state, call your local office, tell them you want to refer your son or daughter for, say, pre-employment transition services. And they can start the process from there. They're going to eventually assign you to a VR staff member, and they'll contact you to come in for an interview with your child. You can also just go on our site and locate the customer referral form. It is on the rehabworks.org. It's stw.shtml, so school to work, that's what we used to call it. And on that page, you'll see customer referral. There's a Word document, and there's also a Spanish version. So you would just complete that form, send it into your local office, which you can find there, and get the process started easily. So again, remember, 2 pathways to service, pre-ETS only or pre-ETS plus VR services, support services. And you can make the referral yourself, or you can work through your school. One other thing, providers can even refer you, but just know, just because a provider refers you to VR doesn't mean you're obligated to work with that particular provider. You still have informed choice. When the VR staff meets with your child, they're going to tell them all of the VR providers that are available to offer those services. So I just want people to know that you still have choice, but providers can refer you for services also. Okay, so we covered pre-ETS, 2 pathways to service, and how to make a referral. And I'm just going to highlight 2 other programs, actually 3. And then I'm going to open up for questions. So one of the pre-employment transition programs that we have going on, well, as of July 1, there will be one starting. And we have some other smaller projects that have already started. This is our VR Summer Youth Program. So in this program, it's time limited, offered only during the summer months, usually between July 1st and August 31st this year. But it's an opportunity for providers to bundle the pre-employment transition services into a unique format. So they have an option. They have to offer at least 2 of the pre-employment transition services. They could offer all 5 if they want to, excluding that youth peer mentoring service, because that youth peer mentoring, because it is an intensive service, is intended for youth who have applied for VR services and are customers, so that they can receive those additional supports. But they can offer any of the 5, at least 2, and they blend the instruction. So like with work-based learning, let's say work readiness training, if you were to get that, typically you just get the 20 hours of work readiness training, right? Summer youth program, you might have some work readiness training sprinkled in with hours of a work-based learning experience for part of the day, and maybe a little self-advocacy. So it really gives them the chance to create a unique summer program experience. And many of the providers offer this in like a summer camp format, which parents love because we're all looking for a place for our kids to spend time during the summer.
So where is this happening?
This is happening across the state, and
Where?
you can find out exactly where by visiting our website, rehabworks.org.
Okay, I got it, I wrote it down.
Okay, so when you go to that website, you'll see a list of providers for the entire state. Because each of them can create their own unique program, you would need to identify the provider in your local area and contact them. Ask them about what they're providing to see if it's the best fit for your kid.
Can I do this and the regular one?
Yes, you probably won't be doing this at the very same time that you're doing, say, work readiness training or work-based learning experiences, but after it's done, you can still go into the other services. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were told in our county that they had to do at least 80, because we had other things going on in July, and we would only get maybe about 20 hours in, probably with the time we had left, and they said we didn't qualify because they needed to do at least the 80.
I don't know what
So
that
they told me,
situation is. I mean,
So I didn't know if if they could set their own standard for how
They
many
could,
hours, that's
they
what
could.
had.
Providers were allowed to set whether
Yeah.
they wanted to do 20 or up to 80, but no more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, the one other thing about what I wanted to mention about this particular service. This is open to those students who are known and unknown to VR. So they do have to meet the qualifications of being a student with a disability age 14 through 21, but they don't even have to be currently somebody who was referred to VR through either of the two pathways that I described. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. And it's, you know, it is a nice way for a kid to test out the waters and see the types of services that we offer. And then, of course, we would hope that at the end of it, you would choose to go ahead and choose one of those pathways so that your youth could continue to receive those types of services with us throughout the year. Okay, so two intensive transition programs, and these are in particular for individuals who have applied for services and have been determined eligible. We have Project Search and Inclusive Post-Secondary Education, or IPSE programs. So Project Search, it really combines the work-based learning experience and work readiness training. And it probably, I don't know the actual curriculum, but it probably combines some pieces of self-advocacy too, right? So it's an opportunity for the youth to do an internship in 3 different job roles with a particular employer. And usually what it looks like is you'll have the student can participate. It's for, I believe, students with developmental disabilities. They can participate between the ages of 18 through 22. It's usually like in their last year, I believe, of school. And they would, instead of showing up for school during the day, their school day, they would go to a host site, a business site. First part of the day, the provider that's working with them or the school staff will instruct them on those work readiness training, social skills, and then the second part of the day they'd spend actually working. So a lot of different, we have a lot of different businesses that offer this program. So it could be like in a hospital, could be in a hotel, I've heard a zoo, what do you call it, city municipalities. So let's say if it's in a hospital, because it's a year-long program, youth might start off working part of the day in, let's say, records, thank you. Okay, and then after they finish that job rotation, they move to the next. So maybe, I don't know, they have housekeeping, you know, I don't know anything. Kids, thank you. I don't know anything about hospital administration. So, okay, and then they'd end up with one more job rotation. This is a very successful program and has been in terms of actual employment in the end for the individuals. We have 23 sites across Florida right now.
4 more coming next year.
4 more coming, great. Thank you. You're one of them, okay, wonderful. So I should have brought you up here to talk about this one. And these are pictures actually of 2 individuals that are actually participating in Project Search program right now. Okay. Inclusive post-secondary education programs are for students with intellectual disabilities. So these are not degreed programs, but they do offer the student to attend college courses among peers, right, who don't have disabilities, and it allows them to have that whole college experience. They get to audit classes, and they learn to live independently. Again, they're developing those social skills. A lot of these programs also incorporate a lot of self-advocacy training too in their programs. And many of them, I'm not sure that it's all, but many of them are offering some type of technical certificate at the end that will lead to employment, okay? An example would be Project Achieve. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that program at Florida State College, Jacksonville. There is a program at University of Central Florida, not sure of the actual name for that one. But for this particular program, there is a cost to the service. I'm just checking my time. There's a cost to the service, and we support our students participating in this by paying for some parts of that, components of that program. And what we normally do, VR has liaisons across the state that work very closely with these different programs so that we can help them understand the things that VR can support, so that we can support our students when they choose to participate in one of these programs, such as, like, we might be able to pay for the coursework if it relates to what that individual's vocational goal is on their IPE. Something else I wanted to say. Okay, also, because VR does have to look at comparable resources for this one, some of these programs are certified transition programs, like CTPs, and if they are, the students might actually be eligible for federal assistance, so Pell Grant. So in that situation, like, the Pell Grant would be applied first, and then VR could assist with it beyond that.
Do they modify the curriculum, or do they have to do the same exact curriculum
It's
as the normal?
It's the same curriculum, right, thank you.
So that kind of sounds like a lot
But they
similar
provide
to
them the
so like
support,
You
do
can
right.
get accommodations
doing
still,
normal.
but the curriculum itself, we just started this in St. Lucie County as well. The curriculum has to be the same, but the accommodations can come into place, so the extra test time, scribes and things like that, all those accommodations that the school typically is able to provide.
And tutoring too.
Yeah,
And if they're doing the same work, they don't get to get the degree?
depends on what they're doing. Some are doing it as an audit, some are doing, like you said, the certificate. I know, like, St. Lucie County, Indian River State College, there's 5 different tracks. One of them is the child care track, one of them is medical assistant. So they're getting that specific technical certificate, but it's not an AA or a BS degree. So they're not going for like the 4-year, 2-year college track.
But that'd be the
It's
same as everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
For UCF, they're only going to take 20 students a year. So that leaves a lot of our
Well,
kids.
none
who
of them are
going to
very
be
large
doing-
programs to begin with,
they're
really.
very, very small. So,
Yeah,
so the other things you're offering are going to end up for
Supplement.
a lot of our kids being the services we need.
right, yeah. So I did just want to highlight a couple of those, and just let you know to contact us. So you guys know how to connect, right? Anybody can make a referral. So you can contact the VR office. I would suggest your first point of contact is always your local VR office. If you've already been referred and you have an assigned counselor or technician, contact them. And if you need to find their information, if you don't have it, just go to rehabworks.org. Everything is out there, the online directory. If you're not getting the answer that you need, right, second point of contact would be ask for the unit supervisor and talk to them. And then if you have additional questions, say about the different types of programs that we have, the pre-employment transition services, you can definitely contact the program office, and you can reach us at vrtransitionyouth@vr.fldoe.org.
How long does this program take to complete?
Well, the services are available, pre-employment transition services, okay. The services are available from the time the youth is 14 years old through 21.
So, but if they're already 18, are they gonna have time to complete the entire program?
It's a cycle. You keep going. Keep going.
Right,
What's
and
it
it's
doing?
not like I
Because it says
said,
till 21, you know, they get booted out at 21 and they're already in it and they can't finish, or they move over to the grown-up side?
thank you for bringing that up. Yes, they move over to the grown-up side. Yes, that's exactly it. So the pre-employment transition services would cease, but that's probably when the VR support services, that's what they need access to, right? The job placement, post-secondary education assistance, and other types of supports.
One of the things we were told, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but I just feel like everybody would need to know it if it is if you apply for traditional VR services first instead of going through the pre-employment,
Yeah.
if you're denied for VR services
Yes.
traditional, then you cannot go back and get those pre-employment. So where you said starting with the pre-employment
That's exactly
and then
why I said
moving
that.
forward
Yes.
is the way to go.
And
Yes, and I wasn't gonna
that's
bring
what-
that,
I
I
just
thought
wanted to
about
make
bringing
sure,
that
'cause-
up, but I was
Yes.
like,
Well, that's kind of it, yeah.
from what I
Well, I've gone back and
understand.
forth, but listening through you, I'm thinking, where does my daughter, you know, because she's probably going to need more assistance going forward, but she's right on that line. You don't know. I mean,
Right,
the
so if you
pre-employment
don't
may be all
know,
she needs.
and what she's saying is, okay, so WIOA, right? When they expanded this access of services to all students with disabilities, what was I about to say? Okay, sorry. They called them potentially eligible, right? Because they hadn't gone through the eligibility process. So those are potentially eligible kids. So now if a kid applies for VR services and determined not eligible for VR services, they're also no longer potentially eligible and don't have access to the pre-employment transition services. I was gonna bring it up, but I thought to myself, from what I've heard, it's very rare that the student is determined not eligible. So that's why I just said.
Depends upon where
I
you live in the
suggest-
Well, see,
state.
mine,
And
it makes
then
me a little
if you
nervous
do
because mine,
appeal it.
yeah,
You have the right to appeal it, because that should not be the case.
yeah, because academically she's gifted, but she has significant social
Mhm.
issues related to her autism. So it's,
Okay.
you know, it's kind of scary, and I just hadn't done anything.
Yes, and remember, like I said, if you start off with the pre-ETS only referral, VR staff will help you determine if the additional resources are gonna be needed, additional services, and they'll point you in that right direction. So either way, you're good to go, start with pre-ETS.
So is this like a 5-day-week program, the younger one, or is it like once a week, once a month, or how many
It
days do
depends
they
on
go
the
to this?
service and how the provider structures the particular service. So, and it's not, what I wanted to mention to you, it's not sequential, so it's not like a linear, you get, work readiness training, you get the, what do you call it? One of the assessments first, you get the work readiness training, you do your work-based learning experience, you do, it's not like that. So it can go in any order, it depends on what the individual needs at that point in time.
And you
And
guys
as,
determine what they need? Or you
in
guys
conjunction with, right, planning with the student and the family.
Yeah.
And the parents can be involved in all of this?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm
We're
just
dealing-
wondering,
we're
I'm just trying to
dealing-
pick it up, 'cause maybe like, what?
Yes,
Then they-
exactly.
then the-
Yes.
they have to be
That's
given
right.
permission.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
before
so
they're
they're-
18,
but
you're
if I'm-
definitely involved.
If they're 18 and I have guardianship or I don't have guardianship, they, either way they can tell me I can't be there?
If you have guardianship, they can't tell you a thing, because you have guardianship.
If you don't have
If they're a
guardianship,
good provider, I still want the family involved, 'cause you have to bring the kid to work.
Okay, all right, so Jan was helping me understand too, I think, maybe the confusion. So the pre-employment transition services, it's not the pre-ETS program so much, they're individual services
Right.
that are pre-employment transition services. So again, it's not sequential, it's not like a whole program. Some kids may not utilize all 5 of the pre-ETS, it's just based on whatever that particular kid needs as they're progressing between
and
those
that's determined
ages.
in the interview.
Yes.
And as you move forward.
Yeah.
Because you can opt to add additional services if you didn't think of it in the beginning, but now you think you will. You can take them more than once, you can take them this year, next year, the year after, until you age out. So it's very fluid. I know it's hard to,
That's a big
it's
word
not
for it.
school, okay? It's not, Monday through Friday, 8 to 3 or whatever. It's very fluid.
I'm just trying to figure out how you fit that in with your, like, your schedule that you already have, set days here, there, and there. Trying to figure out, is this something we can do now? Fitting it in, like, okay, yes, we have this day available during these times, or
And that's
you have to
something,
clear something else out just because it's already on a specific day.
correct me if I'm wrong, but,
Will work around your schedule.
yeah.
And so you tell the provider or VR when you're available, and we kind of work with you. So for instance, you might not want to do self-advocacy because you may not want to do that work in mentoring, but you might think of vocational evaluation and maybe some community-based work, community-based learning experience might be good for your son or daughter. So if that's what you're interested in at the time, then that's what you'll get the referral for, and you'll work with the provider with the days that work best for you.
Okay,
Yeah, so.
thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
So my question was about the provider. So I have this provider, I don't think it's providing the service. Do the providers offer different services?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm unhappy because
Oh.
I'm not getting this stuff,
Absolutely.
I don't get unhappy about the program. I recognize that each provider's guidelines can be different and vary.
Choose a different provider, and I would say also share that information with the
I
counselor or
definitely
tech
share
that you're
with my-
working.
Yeah, you have to contact the
friends.
counselor, because they have to make the referral to the different provider and close out the other one and all of that.
Oh, okay,
So-
all right.
So you
that's
have to work
good
through the
know.
counselor.
All right, thank you.
In meeting with my ESC, staff, my son will be going into what they call extended transition,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds like this, but it goes along the school-based year.
Okay.
Is this over and above that? Because my VR contact, they already put me in for a referral. When I called them, they said, you'll go into extended transition until age 21, and then we will help you at age 22, then progress along. So in Pinellas County, it sounds like VR isn't really the umbrella, it's the school system that has absorbed that. Or should I be calling my VR person back and saying, hey, I went to Family Cafe and they're saying there's a whole nother nutshell that I
Yes.
can work
Yes,
with.
because we're funded from different sources, and they're two different programs, so
It
you
is a
can get
different
both.
program.
Yes.
So I can get that like
Yes.
during the summer.
Yep,
Yeah,
and school
exactly.
vacation, anytime that they're not in school.
So the district wouldn't become a provider.
Some are,
They
though.
are.
Some
Are,
are
like
already,
the- what
which
was
is
the
fine, but
third
that's
party?
different,
Yeah.
because that would be a whole different program than what you're talking about.
Okay, so this is other services. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, yep, good, good questions, everybody.
Come back there.
Did you say where to find out if your county is participating? Because you said you're still expanding.
Participating in which, we have pre-employment transition services available
So
across the
just
entire
going through
state.
the exploration, all the different parts of it, the tier part of it, the tier part of it.
Okay, the
20
peer
hours.
is the only one that's still being expanded across, youth peer mentoring, that's the only one that we're still, building capacity
So
across the
everything
state.
else-
Everything else is available across the state.
But we are trying to build capacity still.
Yeah,
Even with the existing services, we still need more providers.
more providers,
You know,
yes.
everywhere, but
So
especially as the
some
referrals
counselor
increase.
should be able to tell you who's providing that service.
Absolutely, yes.
Any Lego providers?
I'm sorry.
I had a question on the provider side, 'cause I did notice the slide. Are we gonna be getting ICPs on the pre-ed students now too? That was,
No,
because that was one of the slides you had, that there,
Are you going to be getting ICPs on the pre-ed students?
no,
no, because that
I
was
mean,
one of the slides.
no, that's part of supported employment
That's what I thought.
services, yeah,
I wanted that
Yeah.
clarification.
No.
Okay.
no. You did have ICP
Yeah,
up
it's
there, but,
offered as part of the job exploration
Right.
services, yeah.
But not under the new
Under the
pre-eds.
traditional, not the pre-eds.
is it under the pre-eds?
That's what I was told.
See, that's
We'll
why
have
I
to get
tell
back
you
to you on that.
I was gonna say, and one of the things, I think they said it
to
was.
get ICPs on all those.
Yeah, we do have a transition code for it, so,
You do?
yeah.
Oh, well, then there you go.
Okay, maybe it's not that, okay, we
Yeah,
have a,
that's-
tr-
you
it's
call me.
offered under job exploration, but not through the pre-eds referral only pathway. That's what I think it is. It is one of the pre-employment transition services, but for our purposes, you can't access it, just like the youth peer mentoring.
Right,
You don't
that's what I
access that particular service through the
Okay.
pre-eds referral
The old
pathway
song.
only the,
Right.
yeah,
That
no,
was what I
don't
thought.
say
Yeah.
star.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Don't say star.
I know, I know, I know.
We are not, we made it through without saying that word.
You did, I noticed that. So I'm asking this question as a parent, not as a vendor,
Okay.
okay? So I have walked all the way through the high school experience with my son. At no time between the time he was 15 and now 21 in two different districts
They never seen.
have I received information. My question is not to be negative, my
Right.
question is to say, what as parents can we do in that advocacy component to engage this information with the ESC staff? Because I know that they're overwhelmed, that's
not a question at all. But we're, we have another one with 3 kids, and one of them is going through this transition at 17, and this is the first time, like, I made her come, because I'm like, you need to hear this. And because from her ESC department,
I had no idea about this program at all. And my son has been on an
She's very
IEP
active.
since he was 5 years old.
We've had to the last
So
2
I don't
years
understand
ask
why.
about a referral.
So how can we encourage it? Like, what can we do to educate, I guess is what I'm asking.
Message out.
I was told that my son,
Palm
he would
Beach,
get the referral.
AT&T.
You're kidding.
That I was told that the school said, well, we'll refer him, but he probably won't get it, so don't get your hopes up.
Oh,
This
God.
But she knew me, don't worry, I dragged her along, he's getting
Yeah.
services.
So I'm hearing about it, so now.
I have one thing to say. The bar is open, and that's where I'm headed.
Some
This
stuff happened
just breaks
before
my
that.
heart. I mean, Palm Beach County is a very active county. I used to work in Palm Beach County, and the
Broward.
school district was very good. Well, Broward we had some problems with last year. But you should absolutely be hearing from the school district about VR services. And it's just.
It's not isolated, because I'm from Seminole County, and they never bring it up in any IEP meetings or anything.
Oh my God, and you guys are so busy with them. We're in the schools, all right, we have counselors in the schools every day. No, I know,
Well,
I'm
and
not
I
getting
did bring it
defensive, I'm just
to-
telling you
No,
that.
and I didn't bring it up to.
No, but I don't know how to make
very
it better, I don't know what
end,
we need
until they're
to
like
do to make
18
it
and
better.
on the way out.
It's
Is
always
there
a breakdown in
all of a
communication
sudden-
when you're
But
dealing
it's
with
so
schools.
Is there an
frustrating.
advocacy thing that we can do to try and, make this more known that, hey, I understand as an ESC counselor, you're very busy. However,
They are.
there are a lot of parents who need to know this information
Right.
that don't.
Right.
And
what
now
we
my
try
son
to
is
do
17 and
is
he
like the back to school
missed out a lot.
nights and set up, well, you guys have done, we all do it, across the state to have like here, tables and information and so on and so forth. I don't know.
See, I always thought that it had to be the school to refer.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
realize
what
that's
we
what
were
we're
gonna
gonna
do.
do.
Anybody can
I
refer.
thought so too.
I'm a
Yeah.
vendor.
The
I
schools
thought it had to
should
be
be.
the school.
This is a suggestion, since they're both under DOE,
Right.
and you have Bs
Yes.
that mandates all these
Yes,
things
and-
to the districts,
yes,
because
and it
that's
goes
something
in
we
your
see with our
newsletter.
ESC director. If it's not told by the right person, it's not gonna happen.
I know.
So maybe if they mandate
School
that.
districts, you need to get involved with the private sector as well.
Yeah.
Because we've been in the private schools and we haven't heard nothing.
We had to,
Yeah.
then we had to tell them about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, oh boy.
When we told them about it, they said,
They could
"We
add it
know,
to the.
but until he's a junior in high school, our people are too busy, they have too many other clients. Once he's a junior, he'll get in the program."
Now, who told you that, VR or the school district?
The school district.
Okay, and that's because that's the way it used to be. Before 2014.
This was in 2000, this has been, like, I've been asking since.
They need to
Yeah.
have it part of the checklist of the transition.
2014, the law changed, and you can start working with students as young as 14. And we opted to do that, and we are doing that. Before that, we used to ask, because all the funding switched around with WIOA. But anyway, we used to work with students like junior, senior year would be usually the youngest
gave me
we worked
that
with
note
them.
that you-
And then have the plan ready for whatever the services were gonna be at graduation. The plan had to be approved, signed, and everybody had to agree to it. But with the passing of the new legislation, that completely switched everything around, and we are the agency that is supposed to be doing the pre-ed services starting at age 14. A lot of schools still don't get it. They were very reluctant, from our perspective, to work with us on this. Some schools were great, Broward, so.
Broward is horrible with ESC and IEP ways. Are you kidding me?